You are watching Fight Feed, and today I'm going to be going through my recap of the UFC 314 Miami fight card that just happened this past Saturday. I'm going to be going through each fight individually and then giving you guys my recap and breakdown of how the fight went down, and also just give you a recap on what my pick was. Similar to previous weeks, I'll be making a separate video where I'll be updating my pick tracker, where I'm tracking not only my predictions, but comparing that to several other creators as well. So make sure you tune in for that video. Without further ado, I'll get into the card. So the first fight on the card was Cowan versus Cornole. Cornole ended up getting the W. Cowan looked great at the start of the fight, and I thought that she would actually be able to pull this off. I did choose Cowan in this fight. I thought that her wrestling might be able to nullify Cornole's game, but I was wrong. Cornole came out, looked great striking. Cowan got her up against the cage, and they got down to the ground. Cowan got pretty early on, she got control over Cornole in round one. Round one ends, going to round two. Similar kind of setup, but Cornole was, tees off a lot more in the start of round two, lands a sharp elbow, and Cowan clearly tries to get her to the ground. Does the similar trip that she did in the first round, but actually Cornole was on top of it and was able to capitalize by getting Cowan's back, and that's all she wrote. She ends up choking Cowan out in round two. Next fight on the card, we got Tulio versus Gore. This was a fantastic fight. I'm actually a little bit salty that these guys didn't get some type of bonus in this fight, because this was pretty much a war from the get-go. It was pretty one-sided at first. Tulio going out there and mixing up his strikes absolutely beautifully. He was throwing all kinds of different shots, switching stances, landing at will, really, not only to the head, but also mixing up to the body and the legs. Also throwing some dynamic kicks. He was basically using Gore as a punching bag, but what I liked is that Gore continued on with the pressure in the entire start of the fight. Like from round one, I think, until the fight finished, Gore continued to advance, except when he was hurt. But even then, just advancing, trying to paw out there. He was landing his jab. I think both guys were landing their jabs pretty nicely, but Tulio's jab was sharp. Now with that, digging into some of the things that Gore did that I liked, although he was getting hit way too much, I really liked Gore's use of the open hand slap. It was almost like he was throwing it kind of like a hook, but with the open hand, and he was connecting with that. And he actually hurt Tulio with a lead hook doing that, and then he also got him a couple times with that right hand open slap. It wasn't necessarily something that I would say was like a fight ender, obviously, but definitely shocked Tulio a bit to make him kind of evade on the outside and continue. I think Gore was able to kind of break things up a bit with that, but ultimately Tulio was way too much for Gore on the feet. He landed over 100 significant strikes, I think, by round two. Or in round two. It was one of those rounds, but regardless, he was landing at will. I really enjoyed this fight. It was very fun to watch. Gore did hurt Tulio twice. He stumbled him pretty badly, but Tulio has great recovery, it seems, and was ultimately able to capitalize, knocking Gore out. I think it was at the end of round two, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, great fight. I wish these guys got bonuses. I do hope the UFC gives Gore another chance. I know Gore has lost a few fights here, and his record's not perfect, but I think the fact that he was able to stand up and continue moving on and marching forward against the great striking of Tulio, just showing toughness and showing that he's in it until he can't do it anymore. Took a lot more damage than I think any other person on this earth could probably take. And I feel like that deserves enough respect to give him some more chances in the UFC. Next fight on the card, it was Sumaderji versus Raposo. This fight was pretty boring. I'm not going to lie. It was not a very high level or fun fight. I will say I was kind of back and forth, cleaning some shit up in the kitchen and whatnot. And I did see, though, that Sumaderji, was basically able to win this fight on the feet. Raposo really trying to get those takedowns and control the fight on the ground. And I feel like from that perspective, you could probably argue, if you're holding grappling in a very significant light, like most people will do, that Raposo should have gotten the W. But I think in this fight, the biggest difference was that Sumaderji was continuously landing on the feet, even though they weren't maybe the best strikes, he was still trying to land damage and probably landing the more damaging shots than Raposo. And I think that's what ultimately got him the win. Now, it's interesting. When we talk about the judging criteria and damage, that damage is what is supposed to, be the highest criteria in that scoring, meaning that if you are damaging your opponent more than the other, you get the win. And in this case, I think Sumudaerji did that. Now, we don't always see it that way, though. I think that we've seen a lot of other fights where grappling is scored higher, even though it's not supposed to be, based on that criteria. But in this fight, it ended up going to Sumudaerji because he just was more active on the feet, and I think clearly won rounds 2 and 3. Ultimately, though, it was a split decision to Sumudaerji, and I know Raposo was pissed, but I just think that he was not doing enough on the feet to get that nod. So it was a good win, but like I said, this fight was definitely not something that I would want to recommend to a non-MMA fan who's not watching like the rest of us. Next fight on the card, and by the way, so I picked Sumudaerji to win that, so I'm 2-1 at this point on the card. Next fight on the card is Mikhail Oleksiejczuk versus Cedric Dumas. I think this fight went exactly as I expected. I thought that the striking prowess of Michael Oleksiejczuk was going to be way too much for Cedric Dumas. I think that Michael Oleksiejczuk's got a very interesting and I would say a very high-level boxing style, especially from the southpaw stance. He is constantly gaining the lead foot position and just boxing his opponents up. I really love to see how much he mixes in those body shots. I think his body work is some of the best work I've seen. I'd love to watch that. And really off the rip, he was kind of using his footwork to cut Dumas off within the cage, landing those straight lefts to the body, also a jab to the body, ultimately setting up that I think he was throwing a lead hook, but also the rear hook as well, right? So setting that up beautifully by using those body shots to get inside, and once he had landed enough, he was kind of just clipping him. But it is interesting when you watch the replay. It looks like he doesn't really land too flush with the fist. It was like more of like his bicep that lands on him. But I could see that even if it's a glancing shot, he probably clips his ear or the side of the head. And that can knock off the equilibrium, ultimately sending Dumas to the ground. And I am going to just say, I don't know why Dumas was upset in the when the ref called it off. I mean, Oleksiejczuk's landing ground and pound. A lot of the punches obviously are on the guard, but then Oleksiejczuk starts landing that 12-6, and it was going right in between that guard, splitting him in the face. And regardless, like, you can be mad, but like, he hit him 10 plus times, even on the guard. And all that says optically, to the referee is like, you don't want to be there. Like, let's just compare this to an earlier fight on the card in Gore versus Tulio. Tulio was landing way worse shots on the ground on Gore. Gore like literally was hurt and, almost KO'd. Still trying to get up, fighting to get up, throwing fists. Even when he was guarding his face, he was still throwing back, throwing like these weird ass hammer fists from the ground, trying to do something to stay in the fight. And then also trying to advance to his feet. And I feel like Dumas was just laying there, in this position, just letting his guard get hit. And that is not going to be, optically for us as viewers, but also probably for the referee. That's not how you want to look when another man's on top of you throwing punches. So great win for Oleksiejczuk, brought me to 3-1 on the card. The next fight on the card is Erosa versus, why can't I remember his name? Damage Darren Elkins, and I think his name is The Damage. And honestly, that's a great nickname for this fight. Julian Erosa beat the dog shit out of Darren Elkins. Like, it was bad. It was really bad. He did not have anything for him. It went exactly kind of as I expected. I expected Julian Erosa to kind of dominate this fight. And that's exactly what happened. He was just piecing him up on the feet. I think he did get some submission attempts on the ground. Darren Elkins did get a takedown, but ultimately Erosa was just too much for Darren Elkins. And Darren Elkins, you are the damage, my friend, because you received quite a bit. What a great career for Darren Elkins, but I do think he should probably hang it up at this point. Seeing fights like that, especially after Erosa hurt him in the very ending of the sequence, or in the finishing sequence when Erosa hurt him. I mean, Darren Elkins it was like the all fours trying to just snatch up like anything he could from Erosa's foot. And I was watching this, like Arosa just teeing off on his head. And this is the craziest thing. I feel like the most significant strike of this fight is when, what is that fucking guy's name, that referee? The long fucking beard guy that screams every time. Dude, if you guys ever watch him, he literally, stop! That's how he screams stop. It's like the most dramatic stop. And now I can't remember the dude's name. Mike Beltran. He's got the crazy fucking, I don't even know what kind of fucking beard that is. Dude, so anyways, where I was headed, Julian Erosa is literally teeing off on Darren Elkins, and like nothing's happening. And then he straight up bodies Erosa. Like he tried to fucking Oklahoma drill his ass. You know that fucking drill when you play football, you got your helmets touching and you get up and just usually the guy that gets up faster just runs through the other. He barrels into Erosa, knocking Erosa to his ass. He needs to chill the fuck out, man. That type of energy, I don't know if he's snorting a line before he goes out or maybe he's on some roids. That type of energy, though, with a 145 pounder, dude, what happens if he did that and in a freak accident, Erosa lands badly on his shoulder or something and gets injured? Who's in charge of that? I just feel like the reason it was weird is it's he was right in the center. He was literally dividing the two fighters at this point when Erosa's teeing off. It's not like Erosa's landed a kill shot and Darren Elkins is out cold and he's rushing over to save Darren Elkins from further brain damage. He actually was promoting the brain damage for as long as that ending sequence went on. And suddenly it's he finally he thinks that it's enough and he just fucking barrels into Erosa. He could have just been stop, and Erosa could have easily just walked away. It was not they were in a sequence where Elkins is out cold and Erosa is going to further CTE on his ass. It was just a weird ending sequence, and I was actually laughing out loud when I saw Beltran just barrel into him and knock him on his ass. Overall, Erosa did exactly as I expected, and he really controlled that fight, winning it pretty dominantly. And not that I don't think that it's not necessarily a fight where I'm it doesn't really change the stock of Erosa. Erosa's been kind of a dynamic finisher. He's been able to finish guys, in submissions. He's finished them on the feet. And I just feel like getting Darren Elkins at that point, it's not it's not really necessarily progressing Erosa in a way where him beating C-Rod was a big deal because C-Rod's been a prospect he's kind of been a boogeyman for some of the new prospects. And so for him to get beat by Erosa, it just shows his high level talent. Ultimately, I'll be interested to see where things end up with Julian Erosa, but I do not expect that Darren the Damage Elkins will be around much longer. Great career, though, and, all respect to him. The guy always goes out there to fucking scrap, so you got to give it to him. Next fight on the card, Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. This is another fight where I picked Chase Hooper. I expected that it would be a pretty dominant win. And, I think that's exactly what we saw. Although, Jim Miller is still Jim Miller. He's got that scrappiness to him where I was getting a little bit worried in some of the striking exchanges. I'm not totally sold on Chase Hooper striking just yet. I think he continues to grow in it, but I think he's got a lot more to grow on. It feels like when they were in some of those exchanges on the feet, Jim Miller, could potentially land a big shot to put him down. But ultimately, Chase did a great job at, implementing his game plan, getting Jim to the ground and really controlling with wrestling and his style of grappling. But as Chase said in the post-fight interview, Jim definitely surprised him, I think, in a lot of areas where he was able to throw up certain submissions and Jim had every tool in his box to stop those different submissions and transitions. So that definitely a very high level grappling fight. One of the most high level that we've been able to witness as fans, as of recent. I think Jim Miller, you really see, not to just shit on the age, but him being 41, you can really tell he's 41 going round to round. The cardio is just not as there. But I will say Chase did look, he was definitely the fresher fighter, but he definitely also looked like his cardio was, definitely being hit pretty bad. But I do know that they were grappling quite a bit, so that could be it. But ultimately, I want to see Chase fight some younger fighters, and I wonder what's next for Jim Miller. I don't know if he's gonna retire or not, or if he can still get a couple matchups in the UFC. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think Jim Miller is fully out of it yet. Considering what Chase Hooper's been able to do to other talent in the UFC, Jim Miller hung in there the entire fight. But just some weird exchanges with those guys on the ground and kind of getting stuck in certain submissions. Ultimately, I think Chase did a great job. It'll be interesting to see where he goes next. Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Jimbo Miller. So at this point on the card, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm 5-1 at this point. So I did very good on picks on the prelims. Next fight on the card, Yan Xiaonan versus Verna Jandiroba. This fight, so at first I was very happy to see Xiaonan stuffing takedowns because I picked Yan Xiaonan. I thought that Yan Xiaonan could land some powerful strikes, potentially knocking Jandiroba out. The reason I feel this way is because not only have we seen Yan Xiaonan knock out the likes of like Jessica Andrade, if I actually watched the UFC 300 card in person and watching that card, Yan Xiaonan dropped Zhang Weili several times, like in that fight, dropped her badly too. And so although I knew she had to have a weakness from a grappling perspective, especially with Jandiroba, I thought that she would be able to tee off a bit and potentially drop Jandiroba or even hurt her enough to make her hesitate on shooting certain takedowns. And at first, it started that way. Yan Xiaonan had great takedown defense off the rip, and she just wasn't able to capitalize or keep it up in terms of stopping Jandiroba from getting her down. I was very happy to see her get out of several submissions from Jandiroba, but ultimately she just didn't have enough on the ground. And Jandiroba's got that... she's got that you-know-what strength. She's just fucking strong, man. She gets her down and does kind of was doing whatever she wanted, but she wasn't able to get off a lot of those arm bars. And even when she did, Yan Xiaonan was privy to it and able to get her way out of there. But yeah, this fight was not. I don't know. It's just not. It wasn't that fun to watch. But ultimately, I think Jandiroba's got to be up in the mix for another title shot. And I don't know what it's like, but I just feel like Zhang Weili, she used to be way more active. I feel like she's not very active anymore. So I don't know what's going on with that division, but I think she's waiting to see what happens with Shevchenko for going up. I don't like that, though. I don't like that, when did Zhang just fight? January. So that, she did fight pretty recently, but I think before that, her last fight was in April. So like that's where it's like I just feel like she has a lot of time off where now she's waiting until May to see what happens in this fight with Shevchenko versus Fierro. And then, even if they make that fight 3 or 4 months later, you've just got like a lot of time where Zhang Weili's not fighting. So I don't know. I feel like she could fight more often. It'd be nice to see her and Jandiroba get after it while there's kind of like a stalemate. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't think there's a huge excitement in that division right now anyways, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Next fight on the card, Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. This was a hard fight because I really like both fighters. Sean Woodson, I know everyone's saying he looks like a spider, but I'm going to say Sean Woodson actually, he looks more like a praying mantis to me. And I can say that because I actually used to be called a praying mantis when I was in high school because I was so skinny. So skinny and tall. I'm 6'4", and
like this was like tiny. I felt like this was more of a like a violin on a 6'4" dude.
In high school, senior year, I was probably 6'3", and I literally probably weighed 140 pounds. So like I was skinnier than Sean Woodson. So I actually got called praying mantis all the time, especially in gym class because I had a really old uniform that I didn't fit in. I think I had the same uniform from freshman year. So like it was tiny on me and I have long ass legs. So he's definitely got that praying mantis build. What I thought in this fight, I picked Dan Ige, and the reason I picked Dan Ige is that Dan Ige has that style where he can just land heavy shots. And I just felt like Woodson's boxing, although it's absolutely spectacular to watch, he just has his head and chin up in the air too much, and I felt like Dan Ige would be able to catch that and hurt him, and that's actually what happened in the third round. But ultimately, watching this live, Dan Ige was pressing forward, advancing the entire fight. I've seen people say Woodson was winning, which I think is absolute bullshit. I think the judges actually did score it Dan Ige 2-0, and then Dan Ige got the finish in round 3, which the finish is stupid, but in my opinion, I thought Dan Ige was winning the entire fight. I just didn't think Woodson was landing heavy shots at all. A lot of pitter-patter, like, which he is a volume striker, really. Like, he has KO'd people, but, like, usually his KOs, I think, come from just building up damage with the volume, and then also he mixes up those body shots really well. But really, I just feel like Woodson was not able to get off that game in this fight because I think he was probably also a bit concerned about that power that was coming back his way from Dan Ige. Dan Ige just walked him down the whole time, and he had that, like, he had that police officer stash on too, so, you know, he was just going after him. I also like to say Sean Woodson really does also look like a light-skinned Tyler, the Creator to me. So I kind of, that's usually what I call him. And in this fight, I think what really doesn't help Woodson is he has a lot of, you know, head movement, and he moves very often. And I think when he was getting hit with some of those bigger shots, even if those bigger shots from Ige weren't landing, he would kind of pull out very quickly. And I think that those optics, they can almost make it seem as though he's being hurt more than he is by the punches, and in a lot of ways probably not help him out from a decision standpoint. Ultimately, Dan Ige is able to get the finish in round 3, but the finish is really weird because, like, Woodson was, like, getting connected on, but he was still, like, standing. And he wasn't really even hurt. I don't know, dude. The weird fucking stoppage. I think it was too soon of stoppage. But ultimately, I will say I was happy because I picked Dan Ige. That put me at 6-2 on the card because I got Jandiroba wrong. So, yeah, it was a fun fight while it lasted. I think it could have had a little bit more action, but I think Dan Ige had a great game plan. He was able to, you know, close the distance the entire time and walk Woodson down, which I think a lot of people were concerned about because Woodson has a very he's very elusive, and he has a great way of getting outside of the range of his opponents. And then, you know, obviously he's usually got that. He's got that 6'2", fucking 145 build where it's like his range is much larger than all of his opponents. But Dan Ige is just a master at closing distance, so he did a great job. Next fight on the card, we got Reyes versus Nikita Krylov. This fight was, as advertised. Right away, these two were teeing off. I was worried about Reyes. I picked Reyes to win, and I was worried off the rip because I think he got caught initially by a couple shots from Krylov, but I think ultimately I just felt like Krylov is a very good fighter. He just hasn't fought in a long time, and Reyes has a lot of momentum. And I also think Reyes is one of those fighters that people forget, although he's lost a lot. People forget that when he was in the fight with Yuri, he literally KO'd Yuri against the cage, and like Yuri admitted to this, so it's not me making shit up. Yuri said that Reyes literally knocked him out, and like he woke up when he hit the ground and Reyes punched him on the ground. So when you think about that, it's like Reyes has that power to shut the lights off of anybody. He also has a great pullback left counter that he uses in all of his fights. Like, if you go back and watch tape on Dominick Reyes, he has won so many fights by KO doing that pullback. I believe he even did that. So he did that to Chris Weidman when he fought him, which, you know, that was like a weird fight anyways, because Chris Weidman like went up to light heavyweight for like one fight and got KO'd, and then like I don't think he ever fought at light heavyweight again. But if you go look at any of Dominick Reyes' like KOs, most of them are actually him setting up or landing that pullback left counter. He's just like Stipe in that regard. Like Stipe can do that pullback right counter, and it's a very similar approach that Dom takes. Just a picture perfect left hand that he landed on Krylov. Like the lights were out, landed some hammer fists for good measure. And dude, after the fight, like Krylov didn't know where he was, man. Like if you go watch when they were standing in the octagon, I think Mark Goddard was the ref. He was like talking to Krylov, and like he like, you know, you could tell that he like felt bad for him, but Krylov, like the lights were on, but no one was home. Like in his eyes, he didn't look like he was there. So definitely worried. Hopefully he's doing all right. Really fun fight while it lasted. Reyes has that ability, man. I swear, I've got a lot of belief in Reyes. It'll be fun to see where he goes next, because he's kind of right up there in title contention, being that he's ranked number 8, and the light heavyweight division, you know, outside of Magomed and Pereira getting a rematch. I mean, really, I mean, you got like Roundtree's up there, and then you got like Olberg and stuff. I think Dominick Reyes is like 1 or 2 fights away from a potential title shot. So we'll see what happens. So with that, it puts me to 7-2 on the card. And the next fight on the card, and this is where I started to do pretty poorly. I mean, I had a mix, but the next fight on the card, we had Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. I was really worried about this fight. I really love both fighters. I did want Bryce to win just because when I'm a fan of both fighters, I usually have to go American because it's just it's an easy approach, unless I can't stand the person. But generally speaking, I usually go for it. I'm not a huge fan of Colby, and I voted for Colby against Leon Edwards because he's American. Not a fan of Leon either. But yeah, Colby kind of sucks, man. Anyway, Mitchell, I thought looked great in round 1. He was winning in the striking in round 1. But I think it's not necessarily that he was winning with the striking. I think that it's Gene Silva always does this when he comes out. He's never like a super fast starter. Maybe he was against the likes of Drew Dober, but I think that he's more of like a patient, kind of letting his opponent draw out what they're going to do, and then he looks for his moments to capitalize. Round 1, I think Bryce Mitchell won the striking. He won in kind of all those exchanges, landing leg kicks. I like that Bryce Mitchell came out there and he did not play the games with Gene Silva. Like when Gene Silva knocked out Melsik Bagdasaryan, Melsik was kind of playing the games with him, right? Like, high-fiving him. And, Gene Silva has a great way of kind of manipulating his opponents into his game. And Mitchell wanted nothing to do with it. At one point, Gene Silva was like telling him to take him down, and Bryce just kicked him in the leg. Like, he's like, I'm not out here, I'm a motherfucker. I'm going to kick you in your fucking leg if I fucking want. He went and did his own thing. Now, round 2, Gene Silva definitely turned it up. Now, actually, no, going back to round 1, a few submission attempts that got real scary. The guillotine, like, dude, the one point Bryce's back looked like he was like morphing into, if you guys have ever seen that fucking movie Split, when he's like morphing into the next person, that's what Bryce's back looked like trying to get out of that guillotine. So Gene Silva's definitely got some strength there, like pulling him down. But ultimately, round 2, it's a similar story, but Gene Silva turns it up and he lands and he's able to actually knock Bryce down. Bryce gets back up. And Bryce really, you could just tell he was definitely getting tired, being on the back foot the entire time. And ultimately, Silva's able to capitalize on Bryce shooting a pretty sloppy takedown and gets him in that ninja choke, Darce choke, and just that's all she wrote, puts him to sleep. Really great fight. I know this was a very hyped up fight on the card, and a lot of people were very interested in this. I just thought Bryce Mitchell might have a better grappling repertoire that Gene Silva wouldn't be able to deal with, but he dealt with it perfectly. He brings his finish streak to 5-0, so more power to Gene Silva, man. Love to watch him fight, and I'm very excited to see where he goes next. I'd like to see Gene Silva versus I think Gene Silva could be the perfect person to welcome Aaron Pico. Everyone's like looking for fights for him. I think he would be a good person. Movsar's got to get the next title shot. And then Yair Diego. I think you could do Gene Silva versus Aaron Pico as a solid fight. And I think it's also everyone is kind of high on Aaron Pico. So let's see what he can do against the likes of another super powerful striker. I think it's a striker's delight, and it could be a very fun fight. The next fight on the card, we got Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. This fight kind of went exactly as I expected. I thought that Yair would get the W. I just didn't think that Patricio would be able to handle the style of Yair, and that's kind of exactly what happened. Although it was not like a super fun fight, I just felt like Yair was edging out the rounds regardless, and then he obviously really hurts Patricio in the last round. It was nice to see him throwing in some of those dirty elbows on the ground for the ground and pound. Really love to see that. He was throwing like a tomahawk elbow down on him. So Yair's definitely got, that dog in him. He was throwing that shit and trying to hurt him badly. Great win for Yair, and very, very fun to watch that final round. I just didn't think Patricio would have enough for him. So it'll be interesting to see where Patricio goes next. But Yair's nuts thinking he's getting a title shot. Like, I don't know what the fuck that's all about, but he ain't getting a title shot, man. Like, not a fucking chance. Yair should have been selling in that point of, I'm going to fight Diego. Now, I think Yair might have been saying the title shot if Diego won. I guess that makes more sense because, like, that's a Mexico City thing. But regardless of what happened in the main event, now you have a perfect matchup in Diego versus Yair for Mexico. Like, that could be a main eventer even without a belt on the line. So yeah, great to see that Yair won. And it kind of sets that up for Diego. By the way, I chose Yair, so I might not have said that, but Yair gets that W. I'm 8-3 now at this point on the card. Next fight on the card, we got Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Paddy looked fucking fantastic, dude. There's no other way to fucking go around it. I think Chandler initiated the grappling in round 1 and it like gassed him out. And Paddy just was way too much for Chandler on the feet. Like, Paddy was actually hurting Chandler. And I think ultimately that's what caused this fight to go the way it did. I think Paddy surprised Chandler with how hard he hits. And I think he stunned Chandler, and it kind of made him hesitant in throwing certain strikes. Now, Chandler did land a couple times, but Paddy ate that shit like it was a 4x4 from in and out. And I just think Paddy was way too much for Chandler. That, like, I was watching this fight, it was complete domination, and I just don't know what happens with Chandler now. Like, this is a bad spot for him because, like, he's kind of lost to the guys that are similar in age to him in the division, and now he's lost to Paddy. So it's like, where does he go now? Ultimately, Paddy looked fantastic against Chandler. And I think the one thing I have to realize about Paddy, too, is that I did see Paddy in person when he fought Tony Ferguson at 296, and he just looks so fucking big. Like, so if you go watch the ceremonial weigh-ins, I don't know if Chandler had like big shoes on or some shit, but they almost look the exact same height. And then in the fucking octagon, Paddy is like not only towering over Chandler, but he's like fucking big. He's yoked. So I just think Paddy is going to be a problem for anybody in that top 10. I would love to see Paddy versus Ilya. I think that'll be a great fight. But I think actually Paddy was calling out Charles Oliveira. I'd rather see him fight Arman. I think Arman's got that, like, Arman's, close in age to Paddy. Both guys are very strong. It'd be interesting to see how they match up with each other. And so I would say for the next matchup, that's a perfect number 1 contender fight, in my opinion. Sorry, there's a fucking like fly or gnat in here. So I think that Paddy versus Arman would be a great fight. I don't know. I think that they could easily make that, and that it gives Arman that chance to prove himself, and also gives Paddy a test where basically you could say you're next in line for the title. But where Paddy's going to be in the division now, he could even be in a position kind of like Khalil Roundtree where he might just get a shot off of popularity. And I'm not against that. I think Paddy brings a lot of eyes to the sport. He's got a huge fan base. He's a fun fighter too. Like, lately he's been very fun just going out there and getting finishes. So I'm not going to take anything away from that. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if he got a shot at the title. But I do think that Arman, if they're going to make Arman prove himself, it should be against a guy like Paddy. I don't know if the UFC would do it, though, because it could be a dangerous matchup in terms of the star power that Paddy brings. Like, if Paddy were to lose, now they've kind of lost that not the marketability, because he could still always come back from it. But it'd just be interesting to see what the UFC decides there. So I picked Chandler in that fight. I thought Chandler might be able to catch Paddy on the chin, but I think Paddy he's improved leaps and bounds from that Jared Gordon fight. And I think no matter what, it's going to be hard for me to not pick Paddy in his next fight. So we'll see what happens. At this point on the card, I've gotten the Cowan pick wrong, Xiaonan, Mitchell, and Chandler. So I believe that is 7-4 or 8-4, something like that. And 8-4. And the final fight on the card, Volk versus Diego Lopez. You guys might have seen this, but I did a UFC 5 simulation to see who would win in that fight. And Diego won 10 out of 10 times. all within like, I think only one of them went to round 2. Every other fight ended in round 1, and like several of the fights ended in the first minute. That's exactly the opposite of what happened. Volk went out there, and I just think that in this fight, to sum it up, Diego has that finishing ability and he has great striking, but I think that Volk was just engaged in those exchanges, landing his own shots, making Diego, I think, question where things were going in terms of his strikes, and then also just, he was hurting him enough to where he was hesitant. Volk was just landing his, like, every shot. His jab looked great. The leg kicks looked great. Now, I saw a lot of people online saying 5-0 Volk, which is absolutely fucking insane to me. The way I scored it, round 1 is a clear, and I want to say this, Volk won this fight. Like, he clearly won this fight. It was 2-2, in my opinion, going into round 5. And this is just off of first watch, so like I haven't rewatched the fight yet, but I would say round 1 and 3 are absolutely clear to Volk. Round 3 was probably the most insignificant round overall, just for both fighters. Like, not a lot going on. Round 1, very clear round for Volk. Hurt Diego a couple times. Round 2, you got to give to Diego. Diego knocked Volk down. And it was so great to see Volk have his wits about him, though, and get back up. And then round 4, I think, where I lean giving that to Diego is just that he landed a couple shots, and I think he landed that uppercut on the eye. It was an uppercut or a straight, and it had Volk kind of wincing and like pawing at the eye. And like I said, like, I think optics win fights, guys. Like, it's the way it looks to a judge is ultimately like what helps decide, who wins a round. And so with that, I feel like me watching as a spectator, I'm like, Volk looks hurt. Like, he's kind of backing up off these exchanges, not really engaging, and he keeps pawing at the eye. And Diego was kind of going for the kill. Ultimately, I think round 4, you got to give to Diego, but round 5, I think, is a clear win for Volk. And people saying that he's running and shit, it's so dumb. Like, dude, Volk stood there and banged with Diego as much as he possibly could. Like, he's not going to sit there and give the guy a win. But even at the end, Volk literally ran to the center and he exchanged a couple shots with him. Didn't even have to do that. Diego was a dog the whole time. Diego, I think, showed that, his cardio is there and he can do this 5-round thing. But yeah, I think that Volk winning is it's a storybook. It could be a storybook ending for him, but I also feel like Volk versus Mavzar, I actually definitely heavily favor Volk, and I would love to see Volk versus Mavzar because I think that it's a fun fight, and I also know Volk is not going to be sitting on the sidelines very long. He wants to get out there and be active, so I am excited to see if that fight gets pulled together. But Volk looked in rare form last night, guys. It was so great to see him back. And like I said, I picked Diego Lopez in this fight only off of exactly what Volk is even saying in his post-fight stuff, that these last couple fights he's been knocked out. So like he kind of even said, like, I can understand why people feel this way. But just me picking Diego, like, I wanted either one of them to win because I actually am a big fan of Diego as well. But I'm a bigger fan of Volk, and so I feel like at the end of the day, it's a great win. Now, Diego being the champion in the featherweight division what's nice about that is he is young enough to where if he were to have a significant reign, like, it could be for a very long time. And we don't know how much Volk's got left, but dude, who knows? What if Volk has hit this second stride and he's able to continue on and be successful? Only time's going to tell. Ultimately, I did pretty poorly on picks overall. I thought that I did really good. And a couple of the fights, I was super happy because the guys that I'm going against in terms of tracking, I was able to get a couple a couple of my picks were right and theirs were wrong. But ultimately, when I look at it, I think I had the most losses here. So I just got to keep going back to it, hitting the film and making better picks, guys. Ultimately, UFC 314 was a fantastic card. I enjoyed it a lot. I actually watched it at Dave & Buster's, just a heads up for anyone who's ever looking to, go out and do something and watch the fights. You can go to any Dave & Buster's, I think, and watch for free. Obviously we were getting like food and stuff. But yeah, I got to watch the entire main card at Dave & Buster's. It was really cool. Very enjoyable card. And looking forward to the Kansas City card that's coming up. So be on the lookout. I'll be doing my predictions for that one. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you give it a like and subscribe below if you want to see more MMA content.